Hi, Sue.
Hi, Mirka. You always do this at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I'm so sorry to wake you up like this, but I'm very thankful for you to find this time. I know it's hard. I know it's busy, and it's for all of us, and it's complicated. So I really appreciate that you found this little half an hour.
Yeah.
We are receiving Thank you. Yeah, we're receiving some really good response to the Zoom meeting that we held last week on Friday and Thursday about the financial implications of coronavirus for Montessori schools. And I was thinking, because we just can't organize another Zoom meeting which would be live, I was thinking I would ask you if it would be possible for you to have a little conversation with me here on Zoom, which we could record and then make it available, and then people can watch it at their own time, in which you would share, please, if you could, a little bit of experience how you handled the situation in your school, because I think you've done it and you have so much experience that people could benefit from. So if it's possible, can I ask you to please share with us how did you do it?
Ah, it's so interesting, isn't it, that I had a wonderful conversation with a friend a week ago about the situation we all find ourselves in, and we discovered that it really was about our whole life professionally building resilience,
Hmm.
that we own resilience. It's a part of us. And I remember being in Prague and talking in a self-care presentation about there are those of us who are caregivers, and we build these skills within ourselves and we almost don't think about it. So when a tragedy happens, a big event, our blood pressure tends to go down rather than up. And I think the most important thing I would say to everyone, no matter how long you've been doing the work, one, you were drawn to this work. You were drawn to be a leader at your school, or else you would not be doing it. There was something that pulled at your strings and said, I want to be a part of this community. I want to create community around myself. And then the second part is that you have been through many disasters, day in, day out. So I think that's really the basic answer to what happens, is that you have this skill set. Unfortunately, the information overload comes in at you so fast. And we also are programmed, especially in the world we live in, that we need to have a certain amount of information and then we can move forward.
Mhm.
So I think that in that very first week is what everyone was experiencing. How many webinars do I need to be on? How many friends do I need to talk to just to get leverage to figure out where I am in the world? And so for all of you that are dealing with, really know you have the skill, in part because you took your collective skill set in your life and ended up running a Montessori school. So I think that's a good spot. And then I was thinking about re-recording this, and it's a different day. And all of a sudden, all the problems have shifted. And I think that shifting is a very important thing, a great verb to think about right now, because everything keeps shifting. And you think have your feet on the ground, and then it shifts to another, like another view or approach to what you're doing. So that's sort of the philosophical side. That's not to say I wasn't dealing with minute by minute, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? But I did know that if I could settle into that calm and make sure I was taking in the information I needed to take in, I could make it. So we are in week 3 now. Are you in week 3 as well, Mirka?
Yes, we are in week 3 as well. Yeah.
And what I shared was that first week is what I call triage. And the basic, the basic things that we did during that week were compartmentalize everything that we could. What are the various parts of what it is that we have to face? So we had to deal with the staff, many of whom were very frightened, support staff. Would I have a job? Will I get paid? You have a board or perhaps an owner operator who's looking at the numbers and saying, oh my gosh, we just have to cut things right now. And then you have yourself trying to balance all of that out. And so that was, in fact, a big challenge in that first week, is to just know how much information to take in and then what bucket to put it into. And the other things that we did in that first week, of course, were our building, the facilities issues. And we had about 2 weeks in Oregon to think about it. And we had already started creating a compliance questionnaire for people coming into the building. We had a spray bottle at the front desk, and we had a sign-in, and everyone had to agree that they hadn't been out of the country. So that was the first week. It's hard to believe that was just 2 weeks ago. Then we moved on to, very quickly, in the state of Oregon, with a very aggressive governor, she shut things down pretty quickly. And we had conferences the day the news came in that all the schools were shutting. And although some small schools had the opportunity to stay open and to serve their clientele, they eventually were only allowed to do that if they are serving first responders. And that still is happening here in Oregon, that some childcare centers are able to stay open. But the size of our building is such that almost any program that we would open would fall outside of the boundaries of what was acceptable. So we knew we were going to have to close. And the first actual big day that we were facing what was happening was conference day. So all of our teachers were in their rooms having conferences with parents. You can imagine what percentage of those conversations was about their children and what conversation was about what was happening all around us. And then we immediately got to the end of that day. We agreed to regroup on Monday, and the following Monday was when all of our work started. That was when we got to the very hysterical part of all of us trying to figure out how to do Zoom calls and Hangouts. And we used Hangout because most of us are on Apple computers and use Google Suite. So that was the start of it. I really had to quickly address the financial part because I had about five staff members that were really on the edge of breaking because they were so nervous. And I knew our school finances, our situation enough that I was pretty sure that we would be able to make it through, at least through April. I'm thinking, Mirka, we had about only a few days, perhaps less, 4 days or less, between the governor saying it would be a 2-week closure and then the governor closing for the whole month of April. So we didn't have too much time to dawdle with our decision making. We knew quickly what we were facing. And we got to the next kind of pinnacle of security by about 4 days, 5 days into it. After the board met, my business manager and I quickly went through every detail we could so that we could present it to the board. We looked at how much it would cost for payroll for 1 day for everyone. And we took the before and after care expenses, determined how much they were on a monthly basis and even on a weekly basis. Pretty quickly, we decided to work in 2-week increments so that that's what our payroll is twice a month payroll. So we decided that even though we had a month ahead of us, we'd try to work in 2 weeks because we use that payroll as our baseline. And I went on webinars and listened to all sorts of people, and it was hard on some of the webinars, with 300 and something people, and it's hard to individualize your own issues. But We did do the finances. We worked everything through and determined that if we got rid of before and after care, and we created a hardship questionnaire application, we didn't have any idea. We still don't have an idea exactly how many of those will come in. And if we would allow people to pay out over 6 months, create option payment plans, we could make a case right away that we were going to charge tuition in April. We didn't make the decision to charge for the full month until we knew we had a variety of options for families. And in that list was, we are going to really work with you. The teachers are going to be with you. We are going to have some online learning. You can pay over a period of time. You don't have to pay your next year deposit for a period of time. We made sure that our pie chart was shared with everyone. And I mentioned that during the webinars as well, that most parents have no idea about your expenses. And almost all of us have at least 70, for most schools, it's 70 to 80% of our expenses are for the teachers. So once we had all that done, we knew we could look at all of the restrictions in our mortgage and our expenses, and we made the decision. And then we had that next pinnacle. Okay, now we can go into April. So any questions about that first week?
No, thank you. I'm just processing and comparing to the situation in our school, of course, and thinking I think you have a very strong point there that most parents don't know about, don't have an idea of how is the school's budget structured. And I think it makes a really strong impression when they learn that 70 to 80% is for salaries, and that by paying or not paying to the school for the month when the school is out, it actually affects people's lives, and whether the school is able to bring those teachers back when the closure is over. So that, I think, is something, publishing that pie chart, I think, is a major step of communication with parents in this.
And you might think they know, but they only read what they need to read. And it's very interesting. I also mentioned that the families that are new to the school are less likely to feel the commitment to the school. That is a given. And as I said, our school is a larger school, and that doesn't make it easier. We have bank covenants which say we have to have a certain amount of cash in the bank and reserve, etc. So we also had to immediately go to our mortgage lender and say, may we start the conversations about what options we have. And then week 2, all of that work was happening in the background, where we started to create what I describe as the new school structure. That's the second week. And I bet almost everyone had that same trajectory. First you do the triage, then you start thinking about what comes next. And we're now entering week 3. We are going online on Wednesday. Yesterday there were frantic hangouts to discuss the fact that a math application that we were trying to put up just for math practice was not working for the families who are guinea pigs for us, and we had to start all over. One wonderful thing, I'll try to share it with you guys in some way on the Mighty Network, but I have an IT person who's amazing, and he has a great background in design. So he created our Child Peace at Home graphic. So we put that right onto the parent portal where the parents are getting all their information. So in the midst of all that, we're marketing, say, oh, here we is, Child Peace at Home, and it's really beautiful. So we expect today, the letter went out, And today, everyone will spend one day trying to get online, and they will practice so their children can start their child peace at home tomorrow. I think in that second week, the restructuring, it's all about the communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I did everything probably everyone else was doing, which was making sure that we knew we were touching base with every parent. So even at the very, very beginning, when we had that first meeting on the first day that all of our teachers got together, we went through Thank You, Pete Judd's handbook,
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo. And also thanks to Christy McAllister, who is another head of school here in the US, and she had translated that document, and I think many of us created it for our own to reflect our community. We put that up right away. That was a great initial thing to have up so parents could start to see what we were thinking. And then we made it through the week. Every single parent was called by teachers. Sometimes the children were in the call. One of the things that we found, which is an interesting consideration when you think about Children's House and toddlers doing Zoom calls, is that many of the children got quite sad when they saw their teachers. So the technology was a little confusing, but then there was a sadness. Why can't I be there with you? So that was an interesting thing we hadn't really planned for. So we made it through last week, everyone connecting. We even did with our Children's House group, we sent out a Google form to every parent. We have about 120 in our Children's House program, and we had 73 responses to that survey, which included questions like, how is the communication? Is it too much? Is it too little? What else do you need? Are you wanting a Zoom call? What do you feel about having a gathering? So before we initiated the Zoom calls for like doing a class meeting, we decided that we would ask if it was needed. So, and meantime, all of our middle school is doing fine because they did online learning before all of this. So that is great, isn't it? When one part of your program is maintaining itself and you don't have to be on hours of calls. So now we're in the third week, and we had payroll yesterday, and that was a nightmare because you have to determine how your payroll is going to work when last week was supposed to be a vacation week, but everyone was working, and we made it through all of that. And in the background, everyone in the US now is looking at the state and federal programs that are coming online so that we can see the next financial step.
Mm-hmm. So did you actually end up offering parents a decrease or discount in the school fee, or how did you work this out?
We haven't yet, and I did put up yesterday our hardship or tuition hardship application. So you'll see that on Mighty Network if you could just, that's how we did it. And over the weekend, maybe we had, I think we maybe had 11 or 12 emails or requests from families. And remember, we have 360 students, which means about 250 families. And we had about 12 families writing to say they didn't know what they were going to do, they had lost a job, or they lost income, or they had to work at home and they were having to pay someone to be with their children. And then on the weekend, we created our next step with communication. And that was a note that our weekly newsletter would go out Sunday morning. And just for everyone in this group, we also determined that our weekly staff memo would also go out on Sunday morning. That would allow my administrative staff and myself to have everything gathered by Friday or Saturday. So we switched things as the new school structure had a different rhythm, and the parent email went out on Sunday. In there, we made a note of how to get information about the application. And yesterday, we had 15 new applications coming in. Today, I have a meeting. No, actually, tomorrow, I have a meeting with a small group of board members and my business manager to discuss how to process these applications. That application, when you see it, it will say April. And we did make the decision that in April, we were going to find a way through. We committed to pay everyone, and we determined that we would have to find a way to take care of the families. And they do have options, paying in July, extending out over months, a variety of things. We have an automated payment system, so we were quickly able to go in there and change the dates or cut the dates off for April. And then if we go into May, which we now assume we will, we're beginning to look at what the May financials will look like. And the goal at that point will to see how can we bring in more income through some of these programs that are available. How can we support the staff through some of these programs so that we will be able to change the billing for May.
Mm-hmm.
That's our
Okay.
general plan.
So are you, from what you say, I understand for the month of April, did you feel like, or did you receive questions from parents in the tone of that they say, there's no school, why would we pay? You're not delivering any service to us, or did you were you able to create the understanding? How did you create the understanding that it's obviously the fact that they have to pay, because otherwise the school will close down and it won't be there when this is over? How did you manage that? You understand what I'm asking, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's something that everyone asked in those first 2 weeks. And the general recommendation was to charge for April, not to discount.
Mm-hmm.
Because your goal is to stay together as a community. And when we had our webinars, we talked a bit about that, and a lot of the questions came in about that. Those smaller schools might be in a position that they're closer to having to adjust or change. Perhaps you have 2 classrooms, you might have to go down to 1. We have a yearly tuition policy. So when parents sign up for the school in every facet, every level, except for the toddler community. In the toddler community, we have month-to-month payments because the child moves over when they're ready. And once they're in Children's House, then it's a yearly tuition. Mm-hmm. So I would say 60 to 70% of our parents really understood, I am not going to be able to ask for a discount. This is a yearly tuition. And if the school is offering delivery of some connection, so I would like to use the word connection to the teacher, connection to the Montessori experience, rather than calling it the online learning. Online learning may be for elementary, one facet of it, but what you are offering them in exchange for the tuition is the guidance of that professional who knows their child. And if you can communicate that, that is the value added they're going to get. Now, other families are not feeling so generous. There are many families who have said, why would I be paying this amount of money? And I mentioned in the webinars as well that my board chair has been quite wonderful about taking on those really challenging and what I would call, in honesty, unreasonable questions, especially if it was a situation where I was pretty confident that it was not a financial hardship for the family. That conversation between the board chair and the parent was interesting, because my board chair currently is a parent, has a completely unique perspective on all of, and it also allowed us in our administration to continue to work with them on the application for assistance. And we were able to say, you understand, we are keeping the teachers. We're sure you would like that to happen, etc. So I think absolutely in any population, you're going to have predictable statistics. You know, we say in every classroom of children, there are going to be 10 to 15% of children who are special learners. In the same vein, we have a population of parents who look at what we do in a more commercial approach. I give you money and you give me this back, and others are more connected to the mission.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's really about the ability of the school and the parent group to create a community and see this situation as an opportunity to bond and get through it together. While supporting together, we are supporting children who come to our school, us as a school, and parents of those children. And I think the more there are parents who understand that it's really, this time is a time where we need to work together. Parents and teachers need to cooperate to support the child, the bigger the chance the school will survive.
Yes, and I think that when we've had families that have said, well, it's not a question of money. I don't need to do the application. I just think I shouldn't be paying. Then at that point, we just maybe have another conversation with maybe the program director at that level, or even the teacher checking in with the parents. So our communication network has been so good that what are the three things that we do? We're very consistent. If you want to be relieved of April tuition, you'll need to apply. That creates a level playing field, and then you're not making a different situation for every family. So you want that consistency. Secondly, in some cases, you can just wear them down. This is the way it's going to be. And keep asking, and this is the way it's going to be. And we are now planning, as we get the applications in, how do we help these families? What amount of the help is going to come from reserves? How much flexibility will we get from the bank to allow us to have more reserves? And we have not yet pulled in our parent and community donors. We don't have a huge budget for fundraising at our school. We have tried to make our development work, any of those resources that come in beside tuition, to be as designated as we can. But we do have people that can help, and we have 2 or 3 options. One is a parent-to-parent help. Once we get through the applications and see what the need is, see how many families think they might be able to hold on with a payment plan or a loan forgiveness for now. And then we can work at being in touch with our major donors, what we call leadership circle in our school, and say, how can we help? So we're really trying very hard to keep it as systematic as we can. And I do not want to be sounding innocent here. I am very worried for the school. I'm very worried for whether we'll come through this. And I just keep my mental focus as best I can and say, well, just look at where we're at right this minute. And so we really have, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're here, you're being very stable for all your teachers and getting them moving and getting them connected to the parents. And over here, you have this total panic because I don't know what programs are going to work for our school. I don't know what the bank is going to say in terms of giving us some relief. I don't know how many families are going to be willing to donate to help get us through. And I don't even know how long we're going to be closed. So I just try to remind myself that I only know what I know today, but I have to keep thinking about what could happen into the future.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely true. My heart is with all of the school leaders, principals, managers. Um, the situation is really hard and really complicated, and they're really holding a huge thing on their shoulders right now. And it's a very solitary spot to be in.
Yes.
We are holding a Zoom meeting with Kathy Minardi this Thursday on leading in time of crisis. So people who are in this position and who are, like you say, it's like the iceberg above the water. You see only a little bit, and then we have the metaphor of the swan who's trying to
Underneath the ground.
peaceful. Yes, exactly. She's looking beautiful and peaceful above the water, but then underneath the water, she's pedaling really hard to stay above the water. So I think people who are in that position are invited to join us this Thursday, and information is at the Lead Montessori website. I have two more last questions. One, are these deposit fees for next year's attendance to the school, and tied with that fees for next year? I know I've heard from some schools who are in a position of having to raise fees for next school year, and they are in a very difficult spot right now to having to announce this. This is about the time when the school fees for next year are announced and contracts are signed. So in all of this chaos, letting parents know that schools will have to charge more next year to pay salaries. In our country, teacher salaries are rising a lot in the state sphere, and we in private schools have to do that for our teachers as well, because they also have families that they have to feed. So any experience with that? Any advice you can share on that?
We, as I mentioned, did decide that we would not require people to pay any deposits yet. That was one thing we said. As we assess the situation, we will discuss when those deposits will be due. All of our enrollment was done and finished, and deposits were made. So the timing for us was helpful. And even though not everyone had sent in their deposits, I think, Mirka, what we're finding as we go along our way is, what can a family do? When a family hears you say, I can spread this payment out, they hear you are going to be steady, you're going to pay your teachers, you're going to stay open, but you recognize that they might need a different plan. And I think it will just get complicated for us in the school to figure out how to provide options while maintaining those principles that we want to stay open, we want to pay our teachers. So that one we have just put out and just said, don't worry about that quite yet. On the other hand, probably for all schools, our school has a large number of 3-year-olds coming into Children's House. We have a small toddler community. So not all of our children moving up take all of those spaces. So we have already reached out to everyone that is scheduled to start in September and said, we are still here. Everything is on schedule for September. Obviously, we may not be able to meet your child until the summer, but please don't despair. And here is some information. So we've been giving them some things, some of the pieces for what to do at home with their child that we've been giving to our own families. So we're starting that little bit of marketing with the families coming in to assure them that we will get through this and we haven't forgotten them. So I actually, in one case, we had someone that seemed a bit nervous, and we connected them with a current family, and that they've had some conversation.
And announcing higher fees for school year at this time of the...
Well, our tuition was already set for next year, and it was already a challenge for us budgeting wise for next year, and we had stated a pretty normal increase. So we haven't had any conversation of going higher yet, but we also don't know what our finances are going to look like, and that's a problem.
So that's, as you said, that's a problem for another day, and we have to really remember to deal with what is to be dealt with today, and then some things are for later, because one just can't handle all of it at once.
I think it's important to say to yourself, when will I know if I'm not going to make it? And if it looks like I'm not going to make it, who can I ask for help?
Mm-hmm.
How much help that can they give? I know many of our schools that are very small have just started out over the last couple of years. Maybe you are going to friends or family and saying, is there a way that you can help me? And you can determine whether you want to do that or not, and start penciling it out. Say, if I get to this point, I will have to start making some hard decisions. And just have it, put it over there, and have the categories of things you need to think about. Start looking at your resources in your school community. Start looking at your personal resources so that you can say, will I be willing to make this sacrifice that I have to make? Because otherwise, if you're coming right up, bumping right up to the sacrifice, it's going to be a bit harder to accept it. If you're ready that you might need to sacrifice, I think that will be great.
I understand. That's a good point. And I honestly hope that there are not that many schools that are going to have to do that. But just to say that if our viewers if one of you are in that situation, please contact us at Lead Montessori, and we'll make sure to create a little support group of schools who are in that situation, so you can work on it together. And perhaps one of our Lead Montessori experts like Sue, Peter, Kathy, or somebody else who's got some extra time on their hands can help with advice on how to handle that. But as I said, fingers crossed and prayers to God that there are not that many Montessori schools in the world who have to do that, and that together with our families, we are able to overcome this situation and come out of it on the other side, stronger and more experienced, and maybe transformed in a way which will be really beautiful.
Yeah, as I said, it once again, if we can create that triangle between the child, the parent, and the teacher that we all aspire to, if that's the outcome in a percentage or of our cases here, this could be a silver lining for us. I know one of the best things I have done in the last week was when I got the communication out on Sunday and the staff had more information about programs that we were working on. I texted every single support staff and assistant, classroom assistant, who, as we know, they're a little disconnected right now because we haven't gotten to online and learning. And I texted every one of them and said, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Are you okay? And 27 of those text messages, and it was really wonderful, the notes that I got back, which is, I really, really appreciate that you reached out personally to me. And their responses didn't surprise me, but they did remind me how important the personal contact is when we've lost the personal contact. And when I wrote the letter to the parents, my last line was, please give your child a big hug from all of us at Child Peace, because that's what we're missing, is a big hug from all of us every day.
Yeah. Okay, well, so let's sob at the end a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that was very moving. It's true. We miss them so much. And they miss each other so much. So I really am hoping that this will go away soon, and if not, that we can all laugh through it. I had a very nice conversation with Mary Lou Cobb the other day. We recorded a little talk on Montessori parenting in times of Corona. And so she gives a lot of advice to parents on how to talk to children about Corona and what to do at home these days and so on. And we started a little tradition, maybe tradition is not the right word, but a little practice that I'd like to invite you to. In the evening, light a candle in your window and send a positive thought to all of our Montessori friends in the world. So I've been doing it, Mary Lou Cobb has been doing it, and
I have too. Yeah.
yeah. So let's just invite people to join us in this, and I think together we can create this mental positive field, and you know, that'll also help us to get through this. Thank you so much, Sue.
You're welcome, Erica.
This was really nice. Thank you for this time. And I can see your day is starting behind your, yeah, it's showing how the light is coming up. So
the light behind me, yes.
Yeah, so please have a really good day today. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone who will find this helpful. And
we all we want to all thank you and tell you how much we love you, that you have the energy to keep us all together as a Lead Montessori group. And everyone should know that if they need help, we will do the very best. We might not have the answers, but we are there to hold hands.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. It comes from the heart. We're a community, so let's keep together and let's fight this together. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sue. Have a good morning. Have a good day. Okay, bye. Thank you. Bye.